One would ask, why this story?
They didn't talk good about her.
This story was told only in whispers in Fayette.
It's about a girl named Emmeline.
And she used to go out and pick berries and stuff like that to keep herself alive.
It's Olivia Posh, and today we want to talk about a story of a girl named Emmeline. It is an American documentary, and I thought to share it with us all because there is a lesson at the end of the story. Today we are talking about the story of a young girl called Emmeline. It's a true life story. Some people choose to call it a tale, some people choose to call it a folk, but it happened.
This is a true story. Something that happened right here in this town in the long ago. I knew this old lady when I was a tiny child.
It's a documentary that has been documented years back, and this story happened in the 18th century. It's about a girl named Emmeline.
Emmeline was a real person. We've located town records that reveal that much and a great deal more. Her parents were Aaron and Sophia Batchelder, and Emmeline was the fourth of their 5 children living on what is now known as the Chesterfield Ridge Road.
She lived in a small town called Fayette in America, and as of that time, there was poverty, there was hunger in their town.
By the time Emmeline Batchelder was born on January 30th in the year 1816, many families in Maine felt that even God had turned against them.
1816 and froze to death was one of the very worst years for Maine, agriculturally speaking and economically. There was a frost every month that year, even in the summer. The seed that was put in the ground froze, and no crop resulted. It was just dreadful. They felt that it was the end of everything. If Emmeline's family were on the edge of poverty, the year 1816 would plunge them.
And those who work at the mill came to her parents and told her parents that they want to take her to the mill so she could work there and make money that they will send back to the house so they can be able to use it and make a living and also survive. They took her at the age of 9 and she went and started working at the mill. At the age of 13, she met a man who also worked at the mill. He's supposedly her boss, and he persuaded her and she got pregnant for the man at the age of 13 and gave birth. Of course, she wouldn't want to go home to go tell her parents that she has given birth. I mean, where is the money? Where is how to fund the child? She hasn't. She was supposed to send money home, right? So she wasn't supposed to send the child. So people who worked at the mill took the child. They sold the child to a couple that didn't bear a child, and used the money they used to sell the child and sent her back home. What a story. She went back home. She grew older and older, and one day a young promising man came to their town to build a railway and saw her and loved her, and she loved him, and they decided to marry. They ended up together and went to their own home in the same town to live together as couples. After 1 year of living together, the young man's family decided to come over to see where their son is living. When they came, they met what caused the story of Emmeline to change for eternity. She was marrying her son. Yeah. All through the time they've loved up and they've been married, she was actually married to her son. And then it became a chaos, it became a problem. The whole town was on fire. Emmeline, Emmeline, Emmeline. And as of that time, it was a sin, a terrible sin. Of course, it's incense, but then it was a sin to them that you would marry your own child. But then, looking at the flip side, she was not aware of that. But that's not what the town wants to hear. She was ostracized. No family member could come close to her. no friends, nothing. She was just on her own. She couldn't even survive. She was always living on berries and just wild fruits and possibly animals, who knows? But she was just living on her own. Nobody could come close to her. Nobody could say hello. Nobody could say hi to her. They believed that if you come close to her, you will be infected with her sin. And Emmeline lived that way until she died.
The story has always been that she was buried outside of her own home there in one of the fields in an unmarked grave.
Years after, people would tell their children, do not be like Emmeline. Emmeline was sinful. Do not be like Emmeline. Do not do this. Do not do... In anything you are doing, do not be like Emmeline.
She was not good company. I mean, they didn't talk good about her.
But then, as time goes on and goes on, people started asking questions. The generations that were coming up started asking, what could Emmeline have done to bring such a dirty name to her? And it was realized that at the end of the day, she never did anything wrong. She wasn't sinful. Who was sinful? The town that ostracized her were sinful. They were cruel because she never did anything wrong. She didn't know that he was her child, and she suffered in pain until she died. One would ask, why this story? Why Emmeline? I'm not living in America. Why this story? Well, I'm pretty sure that there are people who the society have seen as sinful wherever it is that you are in the world. I'm pretty sure that there are people who people do not even come close to, even in this 21st century, because of one thing that they've termed them or another. How would you feel if you were the one? This story talks about someone who would have lived a very happy life, but because of judgments and cruelty from people who it wasn't in their position to actually judge her, because she never did anything wrong. She didn't know, but they actually judged her. Years and years later, Judith Rosner turned her story into a popular fiction, and the book became a bestseller.
The existence of the book, and then of course of a great deal of television stuff, conversation, and so on about incest that had never been talked about very much before then, has made it all somewhat less forbidden.
Emmeline has now become Fayette's most famous citizen.
Without her knowledge, Emmeline sinned and paid a heavy price for her sin.
Tonight's of Emmeline speak more of the human condition in all times. A wise man once said that stories only happen to people who know how to tell them, and we are a storytelling people if ever there was.
This story teaches us to be empathic. There are people who are still alone today in this world for whatever reason. Let's do better.